Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome. I was on last night and I shot this exact same video and chat. And the reason that I'm doing it again is because the lighting was just dreadful. And I really wanted to share with you these cards that I love to work with and I recommend for beginners. So I am doing this again. And if you want to hop in the chat and ask any questions, I'm going to be here for about an hour or so. And in the meantime, I'm going to share with you these decks that I recommend for beginners for a variety of different reasons. I also want you to understand that I have reviewed and looked at several other beginner tarot deck videos on YouTube. And why would you want to look at this video as opposed to other videos? And one of the things I think it's really important, and you may already know this, is that we each bring something different to the table. So each of the readers have their own, I don't know, their own style, their own forte, and their own interpretations of the cards. And so I'm sharing with you how I like to read and how I came at this as a beginner and how I love to work with tarot students and so forth. And so that's what you're going to get a flavor of today. So this is me, and hello to Mystical Lady. And I'm not even going to try to say your name, but hello to the other lovely person on the other side of the camera and everybody else in the background. So hello, Paula. Nice to have you here. I have wanted to do this topic for a long time and I've never taken this on. And I want to get right to the cards and just really talk about the cards and how, I don't know, it's just like, there's a bit of a fear around picking up your first deck. There's all these, should I do this? Should I do that? Does it have to be gifted? Can I just go and buy one? Do I have to start with the Rider-Waite Smith Centennial deck? You know, are there other options? And today I'm going to assure you that there are plenty of options. Okay, so I'm going to be flipping the camera back and forth. Hello, Joseph. Welcome. Nice to see you again. And so let's go down and have a look at the cards. This is the Spirit Within Tarot by Stephen Bright. It is a Schiffer publication, Schiffer Red Feather publication. And one of the things I love about this deck, also please know that these decks are in no particular order. So this is not my favorite or my least favorite by any means. The Spirit Within Tarot is all in silhouette, which makes the getting away from facial expressions or costumes or even issues of diversity way more accessible. And I love that the suits are color coded, so you know where you are in the deck, right? You know, if you're in cups, you're in blue, and if you're in wands, you're in this goldy color. It's also a very contemporary deck. And you'll notice some of the background scenery is easily recognizable as the UK. We don't have castles like that in Canada, at least where I live, because the creator is from the UK. And I will share with you a little bit from the guidebook as well, too, because it's really nice to get a flavor of the creator and the creator's intention. And this sun card with this person sitting at sunrise in front of a standing stone circle is just so powerful, and it's easy to read. And I think what you're going to see in the decks that I'm choosing for this video are decks where it's easy to pick up on the energy of the card. And just as I'm looking at that sun card, I mean, don't you just feel that sunrise and the joy and the gratitude of the person who is witnessing that sunrise at the standing stone circle? This page of wands, I just had turned this page over here. I am excitable and full of beans. I love Stephen's language. I hate sitting still for too long because I am always raring to go. You'll find my enthusiasm at the beginning of every new project. I am a life's true explorer. A figure crouches ready to pounce. The sun highlights the tip of his wand, resembling a spark of energy. And then he goes on to describe it in a little more detail. But It really gives you a flavor for the cards. And I just find this is a super accessible and an easy deck to work with. It comes in one of these if you have the Guardian Tarot, same box as the Guardian Tarot with the lift up top. Sorry, I'm not going to play with the camera for showing you, but it's a great little box and a small guidebook that it comes with. So that's one of my favorite recommendations. And I love to use this deck when I'm doing readings for all kinds of people, particularly those who are newer to the tarot, because it just feels, I don't know, it's a really comfortable deck to work with. And for me, there's absolutely and never has been any problem in reading. It does not come, I don't know if you can see the black edging. That's my work, the black edging. So that is a mass market deck. The next deck we're going to have a look at is This Might Hurt Tarot. This is not a mass market deck, and it does come with holographic edges. I didn't do these edges. So a little bit more expensive, but also extremely, again, easy deck to work with. It is diverse. It shuffles beautifully. And it's very easy to read. It is contemporary also, but not that chaotic kind of contemporary, and highly relatable for all kinds of people. Patrice, did I say hello to you? Welcome to you. This is the Queen of Swords. And a lot of people also love this deck because it's not the term I think I hear people using is a body beautiful deck. We get all kinds of body types, ages, sides. Lots of different ethnicities are represented. And the thing about this deck is if you were new to tarot, you might not know about indie decks. Indie decks, self-published decks might take a little while to, find your way to these because they're not available on a shop shelf or on Amazon. So I think it's important to introduce a few different indie decks. I don't know how many people can drive a bike like that with their coffee in hand, but yeah. And there's interesting little energetic lines in this deck as well, too. I'm just looking at the two lines that are radiating from the ears of this hanged man. And looking at his eyes, he's very much in meditation. So yeah, so This Might Hurt. It reads really well. It really does. I have, when I need a crystal clear, quick reading, this is the kind of deck that I like to use. And rarely do I pick up an RWS Centennial or one of those types of decks. And I was going to pull out one of the groovy ones. I have the Trip and Wait and the Groovy Wait, but those decks are so heavily themed. I find it's a little more challenging to adjust to the heavy theme. And this one is not heavily themed. It's just contemporary, diverse, and I find it's really easy to read. So where I would go from there. So if you wanted something that was more in the mood of the RWS Centennial, and I do have multiple copies of the RWS Centennial. I have the bordered and borderless and different variations. But it was just not a deck that ever resonated with me. And I don't think that you have to start, with the RWS. I think you can start with a clone as long as the clone resonates with you and speaks to you. If you want to go with a unicorn deck, go with a unicorn deck. It's not necessarily my go-to, but the ones I'm sharing with you today, I would recommend for anybody. Now, this one is the Robin Wood. And so this is where I went as a beginning tarot reader instead of choosing the RWS. It has more of a pagan flair to it. And there is an additional guidebook that is extraordinary. Robin goes into so much detail in the book. I love that she discusses the fabric on the clothing. She goes into tremendous detail about the colors. And for those of you that like to work with color, she has all kinds of insight, little details about certain things that she chose to include in the deck. So it's a pretty special deck. And if you get your hands on the extra guidebook, which is still available, then that is a great resource for reading with, I find, all other decks. Yeah. There's a few cards in this deck that I absolutely love, love, love. And I don't want to repeat myself too much from last night. Some of you were on the chat last night, but the lighting was just so poor. And my camera is not doing great here. I'm zoomed in so much so you can see. I love this Eight of Wands. I love that we have the planets and all that energy coming from the wands. It's pretty cool. And you can see I don't know if you can see the details on the wands, the carving. In this deck, I love the swords. A lot of the wands have come up here. I will just take a handful here and I'll just show you. The swords are really well done. So if you have a challenging time with swords, this deck is really easy to read the swords. You see the figure, the ghost figure in the 6. Robin calls this one the Nana Nana Boo Boo card. Such a sense of peace in the 4 as well, too. I wanted to show you a court. Ooh, here's the Queen of Cups. Look at her. Just let the camera, there you go. She's really, I don't know, you can just feel the energy. And like I said, I think that is my go-to for choosing a deck, is if I can feel the energy coming from the cards. I don't like decks that have flat facial expression. Expressionless, they're expressionless. It's really nice. And that previous deck that I showed you is expressionless because it is in silhouette, but that's a completely kind of different, completely different experience. I can't even find you any swords that I was talking about. Here's some more just while I'm trying to find you the card. The Fool is really nice. I know a lot of people like to look at the blanket in the 9 of Swords. The Knight of Swords is on Pegasus. Oh, here's what I wanted to show you. So the court women have these gorgeous gowns with butterflies on them. So yeah, so that's the Robin Wood Tarot, and I would highly recommend getting the additional guidebook to go with it. Again, a mass market deck. And I'm going to try to show you a variety of mass market as well as oh, thank you, Antoinette. Turn off autofocus. Okay, let me do that. Let me see if I can do that. Okay. Autofocus is now off. There we go. Thank you for that tip. Okay. Here is Poppy Palin's Everyday Enchantment Tarot. Now, for some people, Poppy's deck may be a little bit busy. There's a lot going on every single card. And for some readers, that is going to be really, really helpful because you're going to find clues in the details of the pictures. And for other people, it's just going to be too much. My my advice about this deck is that even if you don't use this as a working deck as a beginner, it can really give you an insight into the tarot. It can give you alternate meanings. It can give you contemporary meanings. So, for example, if you decide to go with the Robin Wood or perhaps RWS Centennial, sorry, my big hand there, and you're looking for a contemporary meaning, then you can go to a deck like this. And Poppy has written, hello, Nora, a beautiful guidebook, which comes with the book. This is also a Shiver publication. It comes in a larger box. And there are beautiful and subtle nuances. This deck has so much going for it. It is one of the most diverse decks that is out there in all aspects. So not only in ethnicity and body type, but I think this is the only deck in my collection that has disability covered in different aspects. So we even have a young man who has Down syndrome in this deck. And so Poppy really did a wonderful job in including so many people. This deck does not come exactly like this. It does have borders, black borders on the sides, and I have trimmed those off. And so now it's more of a tarot shape. And I'll just grab the Robin Wood, which is a standard tarot size. So you can see this is a little bit bigger. So it's a little bit harder to shuffle. So what I find with this deck is, what do I want to say? Especially if you're having trouble with the court cards, this might be a really great deck to pick up. And if you are reading for people or you yourself are unfamiliar with the tarot, it's a really lovely entry point. Hello, Marina. Welcome. And Gomez, nice to have you here. I want to talk about a disadvantage about this kind of a deck, though. When we get heavy into contemporary decks, we have a scene. So for example, here, there's a woman answering the door. Her house is just sold. Somebody's delivering the mail. So if we look to an RWS guidebook, we're going to either be reading about the Eight of Wands is delivering a message, or the Eight of Wands indicates speed. And here we have some very inactive child in the foreground. We have a dog in the foreground. We may have some feathers as well, too. The pixie is up here. There's some birds. So we have an element of chatter as well as the communication that's going on at the door front. So there's a lot of different parts of the artwork that speak to communication and a message being delivered. You might be thrown off by the real estate sign. You know, it's very, very heavily themed. So sometimes simpler is better when you are beginning. And I think that is one of the dangers of working with a deck like this. So I just want to kind of throw that out there. Okay, so the next one on the list is the Llewellyn Tarot. I have a couple of copies of this deck because when I first got it, I trimmed it. And it looks amazing trimmed. And if you do trim this deck, it is a nice pocket-sized little deck that you can carry about with you easily if you have a tiny little bag. Unfortunately, though, when you trim this deck, you lose a lot in the majors. In the major arcana, hello, Jen. In the major arcana, on the top of every card, we have reference to a tale, to a story, to mythology. And here we have Keeper of the Well for the Temperance card. And in Anna Maria Ferguson, that is the guidebook, that is the creator of the deck, artwork as well as the guidebook. She has quite a detailed story associated with each of the major cards, which builds this beautiful layer of story into the majors. And that is what I love about this deck, because it helps you, it helps me to bring deeper association with the major arcana, to explore the archetypes of the majors. In the minors, you don't have that. You just have the title at the bottom. So it is not associated with a myth or a tale. And there is a shorter description for each of the minor cards and an abundance of keywords. It looks very much like an RWS deck, but the setting is in Wales, right? It's a kind of Arthurian era. I also do have the Arthurian Tarot. It's quite different. It's very silvery, and it is it has a title on the top of every single card. So instead of 22 stories, you have 78 stories. And for me, that's just, it's too much. It's too much. But with having them for the majors is just perfect. And I absolutely love this artwork. It's very easy to read. There's very few cards that go in another direction that look different than the RWS. I don't think we've had one really come up yet. Temperance is a little bit different. Let's see. It's very, very easy to recognize. Two of Cups. It's so beautiful. I don't have my trimmed copy here to show you, but if you do decide to trim it, you do lose those titles in the majors. Oh, here's Lou. So Llewellyn. This is the Lou that Llewellyn is named after. And what was I going to show you? Oh, yes. Okay, so here's the World card, which is called the Universe, which is quite a different take on the World card. But other than that, it's fairly easy to recognize. Here's the Wheel, which is the tail of Ariane Rod. Yeah, so this is, it's a pretty sweet deck for even for beginners, you know, if you don't connect with the RWS. So one of the other things with this deck is that if you love history, so if you love history and mythology, this is a wonderful, wonderful place to start. Hello, Fairy Wren Whispers. And then, so let's kind of, actually, no, let's not shift gears. Let's go here. Again, another trimmed deck. This is the Druid Craft Tarot. So Druid refers to the Druids, and the craft part refers to witchcraft. So this one is a real blend of magical energy. And I love this deck. I haven't shuffled this one since this morning. I'm going to try to adjust the light here. So welcome. Hello, Michael Bryant. All right, just bear with me. So the Druid Craft Tarot is really, it's an easy reader. And one of the features of this deck is the guidebook. Sorry, bear with me. I'm just going to close the blinds here. See if that helps a little bit. So one of the things that I would not short yourself on is purchasing the extra guidebook for this deck. The extra guidebook is definitely worth the money. And the guidebook that comes with the Druid Craft Tarot is one that you are going to use for your entire experience, your entire lifetime with the tarot. It's not just a guidebook for this particular deck, and you're going to pick up on so much more, so many more layers of the tarot with this one than you would with a small guidebook. One of the beautiful things about all of the Celtic decks is there's just this real earthy energy connected to the Druids and the pagan practices. There is some nudity in this deck. This Queen of Pentacles is really special. I can just hear her beating her drum, and I love that she has one foot on a rock. Yeah. The other thing that this deck has going for it, as do most of the Celtic decks, is that the Devil card gives you a different perception of the devil than you're going to get in the RWS, which is a much wider and deeper perception of the devil. And if you have a hard time working with that card, if you get so this one, and I'm going to show you the Tarot of the Hidden Realm later as well too. Have to show you her. She's one of my favorite Queens of Swords. So what I want to say, Devil card, Death cards. I think these are important cards to look at in a tarot deck. This High Priestess is magnificent. Just magnificent. So here is the Devil card, Cernunnos. And I think it's worthwhile having a look at the challenging cards, to look at the Tower card, to look at the Death card, to look at the Devil card, to look at the Ten of Swords, and to really review these cards in a deck, even as a beginner. Because when you pick up a deck in your hands, and when you start shuffling it and working with it, there needs to be a sense of, when you hold something in your hands and you go, like, I'm home, I've arrived, there's a connection. And for me, this Cernunnos card, the Shadow Dance card in Tarot of the Hidden Realm, it really embraces both the shadow and the light of the devil. And the light of the devil being that important lesson, that important reminder that we need to give ourselves permission to feel joy, and that pleasure is as much a part of life as is the monitoring of pleasure and what happens when it goes awry. So we don't get that, right? We just get the scary devil in a lot of RWS clones. So that's a really special part of this too. And if you are familiar with if you're going to pick up the other Druid decks, Druid Plant and Druid Animal, you have this beautiful trilogy of decks to work together. So I highly, highly recommend this one. This one is trimmed. The thing about trimming these decks, though, there is built into there's two borders on these decks. The interior border has runes in it, which supposedly has some medicine in it for the cards themselves. So I encourage you, when you buy the book, to read that little bit of the introduction, and just that may just be for the Plant and Animal deck and not for the Tarot deck itself. Before you trim, read the guidebook, because sometimes there's a reason why a border is framing the cards. Okay, so I want to go with the real kind of entry level decks. Oh, this one. So where did I put it? That's an empty box. I'm going to go to this one next. So this one is the second edition. I backed it on Kickstarter, and I believe it's still available, as well as the 2-penny Oracle, which is coming out, which I have pre-ordered. And this is a fun little deck. It's called the 5-Cent Tarot. It comes in a few different colors that you can order it in. I ordered the lavender. I'm a purple girl. You can't tell. And I have found this deck, much to my surprise, to be a really, really good reader. And I also thought that the keywords would be annoying. The keywords would get in the way. The keywords would, because I'm a fairly experienced reader, the keywords would be annoying, but they're not. They're not. They really do. They're very well done. And I think this would be super, it would be welcoming to a beginner tarot reader. And there's so much going on in the cards. They're so fun. They are so fun. And the other thing too is if you are going to read reverse, then you've also got keywords for reverse messages as well too. This is the suit of pentacles, the suit of buttons. Yeah, so I do recommend this deck. You know, I don't have a lot of decks that have tarot decks that have keywords on them, and because I find them annoying. But this one I do not find annoying at all. I'm just going to go back and have a look at some of your comments. Yeah, Gomez, the green in the Druid craft is just, it's just beautiful. It's so, that's one of the things when I pick up that deck. Where did I put it? Oh, it's right in front of me. When I pick up this deck, like, I'm just going to fan these out. It's absolutely stunning. And the purples in this deck are beautiful as well, too. So if you like color, it's so gorgeous. So yeah, so 5 cent tarot. I've shown you 2 indie decks. One is This Might Hurt, and the other is 5 cent. The rest have all been mass market decks. Okay. Pagan Cats. I will have to have a look at that one. I do not have any cat decks in my collection. Nora, I did not read about the nakshatras. Okay. Oh, hi, Neem. So, okay. So there we go. There's a few more. I laid out all of these decks on the table and I was having a look at them and thinking, why do I lean this way? Why do I choose these decks when I'm teaching tarot? Why do I go here instead of going into the RWS? And I'm going to talk about the Thoth and the Marseille as well too, and how I suggest going in from that approach. And it has to do with, I don't know, it's like I feel a connection, and that could very much be a personal thing, because as I was watching several of the other top tarot decks for beginners, there were a few I was like raising my eyebrows, and I was like, whoa, really? You recommend that for a beginner? And when I was having that response, it was because some of the cards are quite different. If you watch several of the videos, a lot of tarot tubers recommend the Anna K Tarot as a beginner deck. I don't. I love the Anna K Tarot. I have the indie version of it, but I don't recommend it as a beginner deck. I find it has, you know, if a deck has a few cards that go in a little bit of different direction, that's fine. But the Anna K has more than a few. And I think it takes a little more time to get to know the Anna K. It's a great second deck, but I wouldn't recommend it as a first deck. This fun deck is a super easy reader. This is not a diverse deck. And this is one of the problems with this deck. It is body beautiful as well too. And if you would like to get away from its lack of diversity as well as its body beautifulness, then pick up the Oracle deck and work with them together, because the creators really did listen. And so when they created the Oracle deck, they made a significant effort in expanding the representation in the deck. But this one is a real easy reader. It's a very easy reader. But unfortunately, some people will not connect with it because of those two particular issues. And the cats, if you like cats, this deck would pair really nicely with the cat oracle deck, because there's so many cats in this deck. And I think this deck lends itself beautifully to storytelling. Like the Anna K Tarot, the aces are humans, not just objects. And they are really, really expressive. The Ace of Swords is one of my favorites. It's really something. I don't like the wheel in this deck. Sometimes, not every deck can you love every single card. And there's a few that kind of have their own thing going on, and that, of course, is always a problem. But as long as a deck doesn't have two, what do I want to say here? If you have started and you have picked up an RWS deck and you have started to learn that, I'm going to call them traditional meanings, and then you pick up another deck that is a clone and it goes in a different direction, that can be really confusing. So I really recommend getting to know, I call this one my Harry Potter card. I love this one. To not hop around from deck to deck, to get really familiar with the deck that you have decided to get to know. And for me, it was, oh my goodness, I can't tell you how many years I read with the Robin Wood. My second deck was the Osho Zen. I did have an RWS before that, but I knew right away it was not going to be my deck. And so then I found the Robin Wood, and I only read with Robin Wood for several years, many years. And then Osho Zen, and then I had those two decks, and I read with those two decks exclusively for years and years. This is the Ace of Swords I was talking about. So if you have gotten onto TarotTube and you are a beginner and you're picking up that collector bug, I think you can start collecting, but I would put them away and try to discipline yourself into staying with one or two decks maximum at a time. Okay, so Paula's lost her Anna K. So Antoinette, you learned the hard way about, opening too many decks at the same time. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, I think it is super, super important, because when I started reading tarot, there was no TarotTube. I didn't know. I never heard of somebody that had 100 tarot decks, let alone 500 tarot decks. I mean, my God, why would you do that? The woman that my mentor, she probably had 30 decks. And she'd been reading for years and years, and all of her decks were very RWS-ish. RWS-ish, is that a word? So yeah, so that is, I think it's really, really important. So, and the other thing too is, if you pick up your deck and you don't love it, then just put it away. You might come back to it, but you need to find one that you feel that joy as you pick it up. It's important. It's really important. I just need to count where we're at here with decks. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm kind of lost in the decks I was going to present to you. Okay, I might come back to one that was a beginner one. I have 2 daughters that have decided they want to learn tarot. They're in their 20s. And they're fortunate because they can just go through my tarot cupboard and start looking at decks and choose one that resonates with them. And it was actually kind of difficult to find decks. And I want to talk a little bit about this one here. So this is Tarot of the Hidden Realm. And I know a lot of people have a hard time with Tarot of the Hidden Realm because it's quite close up. And again, it's a body beautiful deck. It's all white faces. So these are issues, very real issues in this day and age. But there's something magical, and they are magical. My daughters are magical. They're both little witches, deeply connected to the earth and very curious about energy, they're very good about reading faces and reading people's body language. And in this deck, you get incredible body language. I mean, you get beautiful bodies with beautiful bodies with amazing body language. And the elements in this deck really, really come into it. Like you can feel the wind, you can feel the autumn, you can, and the joyful cards are so joyful. The faces on the Fae, it's just extraordinary. There is nudity in this deck as well too. This is the 9 of Pentacles in this deck. And if you can connect with abundance at the level of spirit, if you can connect with the whole idea of earth as the suit of earth, the suit of pentacles, then this is a deck that will work for you as a beginner. If you can connect with air and the energy of air as an energetic element, this deck will work for you. If you are Pisces, or you have double Pisces in your chart, you will get this deck. The emotions in this deck are incredible. Whether the emotions are calm or the emotions are, ravage, they're just really something. I adore this Page of Wands. And I can just see, and I can feel the energy of that feisty little kid who wants to play sticks. That is the Page of Wands. The Page of Wands wants to play with sticks. And that is one way to look at it. But the Page of Wands is full of adventure and passion. And I don't think this is a challenging deck to read at all. If you really understand the elements and you understand what that feels like. Like here is the 5 of Swords. And, there's one person in the card, there's some birds, there's a wintry scene, there's distress. It's really something. Yeah, and the 5 of Cups is the same. Like it's full of passion, right? And this, I could just show you every card in this deck. I love this deck. And I'm also very familiar with this deck. I've looked at it so many times and read with it so many, many times. And there are 4 animal cards in this deck, and the animals are deeply connected to the element of that suit. So it's not a problem. It's easy, and you only have to learn 4 animals. It's not 78 different animals. And if you're not familiar with the energy of the animal, then that deck becomes overwhelming. And for some people, an animal deck might work for a beginner deck, but I feel for most people, it's too much, because unless you are really attuned to the energy and the medicine of the animals, it can be overwhelming to have all these different animals in a deck. But maybe you're a cat lover and you can find a cat deck that is beautifully illustrated and you can connect with that. So go with that, but stay with it. Right? Deck hopping is not a great a way to start to work with the tarot. I think you get lost and you get overwhelmed. So yeah. Well put, Essence. Thanks for that, Neem. Okay. I just held up a card that looked like me. I don't know. I don't know which card you're referring to. If somebody can let me know, I think that's sweet. I will have a look. I'm sure were you talking about Tarot of the Hidden Realm? Okay. Um, and Jen says she couldn't stick to that rule for 1 second. Well-Tempered Chair has a question, so let's go there. Can you speak about other YouTubers recommending them Wild Unknown as a beginner deck? Of course I can speak to that. I love that deck. I don't have it out here because I don't recommend it as a beginner deck. The only person I would recommend it to a beginner deck was a yoga student who was well versed in the chakras, who'd done a lot of yogic work. I think that's one of Kim's fortes, is bringing in Kim Kranz's fortes, the creator, is bringing in those elements into that deck. There is a lot going on with the colors and with the energy of the yogic medicine in that deck. Like, that deck appears to be, people call it simple. People call it, I've heard all kinds of descriptors that I just shake my head. Whoa, this deck is anything but simple. And I have done, so Well-Tempered Chair, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Well-Tempered Claire, not Well-Tempered Chair. Well-Tempered Claire, recently did a video. It was called 10 Ways to Connect with the Wild Unknown Tarot. So you might want to look to that video and you can see, how I feel and work with and recommend, like, if people want to connect with it, then that's a video that might be helpful for you to connect with it. Yeah. So that's what I have to say about that. I didn't bring it out today because I don't consider it a beginner's deck. Okay. All right. So Gomez, which card is it? I'm so curious now. All right. Was it in Gomez in this deck? Somebody in this deck looks like me. Okay. Somebody. I believe it because I have kind of wild, crazy hair, and there's a lot of wild, crazy hair in this deck. I'll have to go through. Okay. Next. So what if you're a bit of a nerd? What if you're a bit of a tarot nerd and you like to study and you like to read and you like to investigate? I think that you can go to other decks. If you have, I belong to a lot of the Facebook groups, like Tarot Nerds and a few other ones. And one of the things I've noticed, being a member for several years now, is that people ask the same questions over and over and over. And some of the Facebook groups are very good about packaging up the questions so you can go back and do a unit and so forth. But there's always questions about how long does it take to learn the 78 cards? How long? Like, there's this impatience with learning the tarot. And I don't think you can answer that question with time. It has to do with the amount of energy that you put into connecting with your deck. And if you love to read, there's lots of beautiful resources out there. If you are an inquiring mind with a deck like the Tarot of the Hidden Realm, you could be looking into the energy of, some of the fae in this deck, like the Morrigan energy. If you like the Celtic tales, you could be looking into other references and really getting into the energy of the deck by, nerding out in those amazing adventure stories, but in a more contemporary deck. So this is the Slow Tarot. And this Five of Wands is very similar to, other Five of Wands, except here we have a bunch of children playing with sticks. And the thing I like about this deck is that it has a really good mix of the light and the dark. So it's heavily, heavily illustrated, painted, but it has a really good mix of the light and the dark. And many decks don't. So one of the things I like to do when I awaken a new deck and I get a new deck, and a beginner couldn't do this likely, is to go through and sort the deck and go light. I'm going to use light, dark. We could use other adjectives as well too, because every single tarot card has a light aspect and has a shadow aspect. And if the devil, like I was saying, is always in shadow, it's very hard to see the light. If the Seven of Swords or the Seven of Wands is always in shadow, it's hard to see the light aspect, right? So the light aspect of the Seven of Wands is really, standing up for what you believe in is a wonderful quality, to have the endurance and the strength to do that. When it becomes shadow is when it's too much for protection and you stay in that cage for too long. And I find that in this deck, it has a really beautiful balance. But what I wanted to mention with this deck was that there's some really interesting things in this deck. And when I got it, I spent a lot of time looking at some of the symbols. And I was looking up the energy of the sextant, and I started reading about the sextant, and I was really curious about the figure on this boat and whether there was a figure in mythology that I could relate this to. And I just felt that there was something there was some layers to this deck that were, hidden underneath. And the creator of this deck apparently is going to write an extended book at some point. And when I saw this Four of Swords, I swear I was transported to another lifetime. I felt deeply, deeply connected to this Four of Swords. And so the reason I'm showing you this deck today is that if you are a beginner and you are entranced with a deck for one reason or another, as long as you give individual cards sufficient time, I feel that you can go there. So I want to give you another example from this deck, and it has to do, I spoke about this last night. It was the blue mask in the King of, oh, here's another one. So at first glance, some people might not know that this creature's name is a hippocampus. I am a yoga nidra certified teacher. I teach yoga nidra all the time. And the hippocampus is a very big part of the training. The neurology, the neurobiology study is an important part of learning to become a yoga nidra instructor. And when I realized that in this Knight of Cups, we had a hippocampus, it was like, whoa, this is so cool. And so I went back and got out my yoga nidra notes and started to read about, again, refreshing myself about the hippocampus, and then about the mythology of the creature, the hippocampus, and trying to tie that all together. And so my point is that if you like to nerd out on the tarot, then that's totally cool. And you can learn so much by taking time with your cards, one by one, starting to explore things that other people might not see, like the Queen of Fire with their feet in the fire. Like, that's very, very cool. And then also with this deck, you can go to the gallery website and zoom in on any of the pictures and look really, really close up, like microscopically close up, which is amazing. Here's another very precious Page of Swords. So, oh, here's the one I wanted to show you, and then we'll go on to another deck. So when I saw this card, this is the bizarrest King of Wands. We have so many symbols in this deck, in this card. And the blue mask in the corner here on the table is not discussed in the little white book, the little brown book. And so I got out my little magnifying glass and I was kind of staring at it, and I Googled mosaic turquoise mask. And I got a hit right away. And so I started reading about it, and fascinating. Kind of a hard time tying everything in on the card, but I really, really enjoy that journey. And I think even as a beginner, it's important to, to find a deck that you can explore and to go and to deep dive with. Beginners can deep dive. And that's another reason for staying with a deck for a year or longer. So, yeah. Tarot is a never-ending study. It's so much fun. I really, really love studying. Let's just go to Jen's comment here. My number one beginner recommendation, if someone wanted to learn RWS, is the Beginner Guide to Tarot by Juliet Sharman Burke. Good to know. Good to know. And my, if you go, I have done a few book videos. I'm not going to go into books today, but thank you. Thank you for that, Jen. All right. And I think I'm going to go, I've got one more thing. Oh, no, two more things I'm going to share with you. Okay. So what I was saying about choosing a deck that fits you, it's really important. So, and I'm going to talk about the Marseille and I've got this in my hand. So I'm going to talk briefly about entering through the Marseille and the Thoth. So why would I recommend somebody to go to the Marseille and go to the Thoth as opposed to coming in through an RWS or an RWS clone? So if a person was immensely familiar with astrology, or maybe they had associations with the Golden Dawn, maybe there was a history of secret societies in their family, or they were a history buff, or, there was, I knew something about them that would connect them deeply to the Thoth, then I would guide them that way. Because for some people, that is an area of comfort, and they're fascinated with symbol. And there are some RWS clones that have an abundance of astrological symbols on them, but not too many. For the most part, there's few astrological symbols on the RWS clones. So if I knew somebody was already reading astrology, I might recommend going in through the Thoth. And, if somebody was a bit of I was going to say like an actor, but maybe that's not what I mean. There's something about the Tarot de Marseille. And there's something about its quirkiness. There's something about its the palette of colors that's used in the Tarot de Marseille, like fewer colors, the amount of white space. If somebody already was familiar with numerology and had a good background in numerology, I would recommend starting with the Tarot de Marseille, because I think if you can start to read with pip decks, with pip cards, it's a really interesting way and less complicated way, I think, to start to read, because we read with the pip cards in the Tarot de Marseille from, if we have an increasing number, we have an increasing energy, quite simply. But I don't know, for certain people, I would send them in that direction. I wouldn't necessarily recommend RWS for everybody. It's not a match for everybody. So I just want to say that. This deck. So if you don't feel comfortable looking at Pixie's artwork, and I don't want to knock Pixie's artwork, I like that deck. Probably the Centennial is my favorite. I have several different variations, as I mentioned, and I totally respect that deck, but it's not my go-to. It's not my go-to at all. I like the energy that is represented in other decks more, and I don't feel deeply connected to it. And so when I'm trying to help someone find a deck that they feel connected to, it's good that I have, a range of decks in this busy mind of mine. This one feels like a deck I would recommend for somebody who was connected to the stars, star energy, somebody who was curious about Lemuria and Atlantis, somebody who felt they were a star child, that kind of energy. My daughter, who I was talking about, who's very deeply connected to the earth, looked at this deck last night and said, "What is this? What is this?" I said, "No, this is not a deck for you." And I know this is not a deck for her. This is a deck for somebody that feels this energy. And this Queen of Cups is just so gorgeous. Just a second. I'm going to find I want you to see there we go. That's so beautiful. So we have a lot of silhouette in this deck as well, too. And it is very celestial. And so I would recommend this deck for those celestially inclined beginners, perhaps as a second deck. Here is Judgment, right? So we have that whole sense of transformation. We have the Phoenix energy here, right? And while it is celestial, it's not that far from, I don't know, there's just something really, really light about the energy of this deck. And I know, I know the kind of person that would connect to this. The sun is as a scenic landscape, as is the moon. See if I can find it for you. It's really lovely. This is called the Star Seeker Tarot. And the guidebook is extraordinary. It's a little white book. There's the Seven of Wands in this one. It's a little white book, but it is so clearly written. And so here, so this is a King of Swords, which is a very different looking King of Swords. But for the person who connects, it's like the swords are taken to that level of wisdom. You know, like it's the so here's the light aspect of the King of Swords, not the shadow aspect of the King of Swords. I want to share this little book with you because it's pretty sweet. Hopefully, it's not too far away. It's right over here. One second. Okay, so let's just go to that King of Swords who is sitting in meditation. I love the way, so the deck creator's name is Nikki Farada. This is the book, the box. Oh, and the card backs are to die for. Look at them. It's so pretty. It has lavender sides, so it's right up my alley. The King of Swords meditates above the clouds, his sword in a resting position within reach. The king has mastered the art of the sword, but more importantly, he's learned that he usually doesn't need it. In his youth, he was ambitious and competitive, always eager for a fight. Now his greatest goal is to maintain peace within his community. And he knows that collective peace begins with the self. The King of Swords invites you to act from a place of mental maturity and integrity. Where you may have been immature or unsure of yourself in the past, you now have the tools you need to make more informed choices. You have the intellect, clarity, and experience needed to act from a place of certainty. And it goes on. And there's keywords, and there's a few keywords for reversed messages as well, too. So I wanted to show you a few different decks because when I recommend, I don't think, everybody doesn't fit into the same package. There is a beginner deck for different people. And if you can reach out and you ask and you let me know, what you love to do, and I might recommend a different deck, or depending on your age, perhaps, depending on different interests outside of the tarot, sometimes that can play a part in it as well too. But the first 4, 5, 6 decks that I showed you in this video, I think they're extremely accessible and wonderful places to start working with the tarot. So I'm always curious about other people's opinions on this, and I love to look at this kind of video to see where people started and what decks they would recommend. Now, interestingly, when I started preparing a couple of days ago for this video, I had a list of 18 decks that I was going to introduce. And then I started to look at them in detail. And a couple of them are still on the table here. One is the Way Home Tarot. And another one I thought perhaps might be kind of fun for a beginner would be Shadowland. But both of those decks I eliminated from this video, not because they're not wonderful decks, but because I don't think they are the best place for a beginner to start. I think there needs to be adequate resources. There needs to be, you need to be able to tell a story from the card as it is without going to the little white book. And if there's confusion when you look at a card, you're not going to stick with it. So I think that's important, that for pretty much all 78 of the cards, you look at it and you go, oh, this is a card about da 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 da. And ideally, you can start without the little white book. And then once you've kind of had a little deck tour, then you can start your tarot study with whatever reference resonates with you or comes with the book. Okay. So I think that's it for today. I do not have the transparent tarot. The transparent tarot, Now, why do I know this? Who is the creator of the Transparent Tarot? The creator of the Transparent Tarot has another deck that I was looking at, and then I realized that's the creator of the Transparent Tarot. So let me know who that is, because there was a reason that I was looking at that recently. Two and Three of Wands. Yes, that card is an issue for some people. And so part of tarot study, I find, is to really get comfortable and to do a study with the twos. And so to take all of the twos out of your deck that you're working with and to really look at the energy of the twos and what does two mean? So two is greater than one. Two is a pair. Two is dualism. The two introduces opposites. It introduces separation, right? So where there was one and now there's separation. So there's a lot of medicine in the energy of the number two. So do I go this way? Do I go that way? Can I balance these two things? What am I supposed to do when I have, these ideas in my head? Two of Cups introduces, yeah. So you really need to get comfortable with the energy of two and what two means. Two is greater than one, but two is also separation. And then three completes the two. So three becomes a triangle. So the two births something and becomes a three. Three is a trinity. Three is the first trinity in the tarot. The first is 3, the second is 6, the third is 9. So if you can look at the energy of 3 and the magic of 3 and the divinity of 3, there's that to the 3. And with threes, we can also look at the energy of the triangle. Usually the triangle is pointing in an upward direction, and the triangle represents the element of fire, and there's a sense of moving forward with that. So the 2 is very much, there's a pause to all of the 2s. There's not much happening with the 2s. They're an inward looking number, as most of the even numbers are, right? So the even numbers pause, the odd numbers kind of move, generally speaking, not with all of the cards. So there's that kind of energy. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like you need to work with the layers and not just the RWS idea of the 2 and the 3 of Wands. The more that you can work with the numbers, I think the easier that becomes. And then to start to look at pip 2s and 3s, because you're going to get that same kind of energy in the pips cards as well too, with expansion and retraction, or pausing and moving forward, however you want to look at that. Yeah, it's fun. It's so much fun. Ah, yes. Okay. Emily Carding. Yes, Transparent Tarot. Okay, so I'll tell you this story. I love the Tarot of the She, not a beginner deck, I don't think. And I wanted to invite Emily to my Creator Stories series, which is on pause right now. And so I started looking at the Transparent Tarot. So I might look at it a little bit more. Emily Carding is, I didn't know she was an actress. And I started following her on Instagram. And so that's where I saw the Transparent Tarot. So yeah, so let me know what you think of it. I haven't used it, or if anybody else, I haven't watched any videos on it. Yes. Okay. Even is stable. Odd is unstable. That's definitely another adjective that works with it for sure. Okay. So that is a wrap for this video. And if there are beginners watching the playback and you have questions about any of these decks, or you want to just throw another deck out there and say, Sadhana, what do you think of this one? Is this a good place to start? I'm happy to, put my 2 cents into that as well too. And I really want to wish you all well on your tarot journey and have fun. That's the most important part, and enjoy the sensorial experience of it as well too. And I talked about this last night, but not tonight. Actually, I'll do one more thing, then we'll sign off. Because I talked about this last night, and then I decided I unlisted that video because the lighting was just horrible. Scissors. These are my trimming scissors. I don't even know what brand this. Anyway, I love these scissors. So sometimes when a deck is really hard to connect with, I purchase another copy. Now, I've done that 3 times. 3 times because I did that with the, I showed you one today, the Llewellyn Tarot. So I repurchased it because I wanted those titles back on it. The deck that I'm trimming right now, very, very slowly, is the Chemonette Tarot, which I bought years ago. And I always wanted to trim it, and I never did because I was afraid to do so, because it has it's a different story. It's a slightly different deck. Like, this is the Magician card. And so my advice in this department, when you have a deck that is highly, highly intuitive, if you like to trim, if you like to mod your decks, is to only trim a few cards at a time. So I'm going about this really slowly, and drawing and journaling and creating connections. So here's an example. In the guidebook, the creator's name is Eden Gallanter. I was reading about the High Priestess. And so she describes the High Priestess that the black arches are the ribs, and the stones on the arch at the back is her spine. And then we have her heart represented by the red ink in the center. And she talks about all this, these really interesting things, right? And then she talks about the pillars. And then she says, well, the pillars are the mirror of the pillars in the moon card. So then I decide, okay, I'm going to go and trim the moon card. And so as part of my tarot study, I've got these 2 cards side by side and contemplating the art, contemplating the energy of the High Priestess, and why the creator has decided to kind of dissect the High Priestess, and to have a look at her parts and what all those parts mean. And maybe all those parts have come together in the moon card. And so this is what I mean by taking a deck slowly, right? We're so darn impatient. It's really hard for people to enjoy the journey. And I love the journey. The journey is the best part. Don't you hate it when you get to the end of a trip or the end of a holiday? The best part is the middle. So I think that's a really good note to end on tonight, is to enjoy the middle, to enjoy the steps, and to not be in a race, right? Because it's so much more fun in the middle than it is at the end. Yeah. So thanks. Thank you all for being here. And let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to chat with you again later in the comments below. Okay. Stay well. Namaste, everybody.